Hi, I'm Luke Mitchell. In today's video we'll be talking about Ghosts, the 10th instalment in the Call of Duty franchise. It is a curious game full of promise and potential that far outstrips the Call of Duty titles that came before it. But does it deliver on that promise? Let's have a look, shall we? Call of Duty traditionally places story and, more pressingly, story coherency way down the list of design priorities, but interestingly, Ghosts begins by at least attempting to buck the trend. After the prologue scene where an as yet unknown force takes control of an orbital gun platform and levels its weapons at America, your character's brother Hesh describes the events of the intervening 10 years. The great oil-producing deserts are gone and a shadowy group, borrowing its flag design from the European Union apparently, called the Federation, an alliance of South American countries, arises in the vacuum that this creates. They attack America for some reason and achieve victory by pummeling the country with missiles from the aforementioned missile platform named Odin. The final part of Hesh's introductory dialogue is, and here, just beyond the craters of no man's land, we find ourselves in a defensive war against a more powerful enemy. A weakened America, almost irrelevant on the global stage and reeling from a hard-won and bloody stalemate with a superior force, is a compelling basis for a video game. It was the reason I pre-ordered the game back in 2013. That and the absolutely appalling release experience of Rome Total War 2 a few months previously led me to vow never to pre-order a game again. Because the premise is undoubtedly an interesting one, perhaps the most radical of the entire Call of Duty back catalogue. The best thing that Modern Warfare 2 did was to shift the conflict onto American shores. It is an idea that is comparatively little explored, certainly not with the viscerality that your typical Call of Duty campaign can deliver. Ghosts isn't radical enough to actually show America's grinding, inevitable downfall. The fanbase isn't happy to play as the losers just yet. No, Ghosts does the 10 years later thing after the opening prologue and actually starts the true thematic and mechanical meat of the game after America has lost the war. The best that can be said is that at most Ghosts toys with moments where it properly engages with this premise, but these moments are few and so far between that they could seem more like pacing moments to give the player a moment to catch their breath than any real attempt at mechanical storytelling. 10 years later, the dust has taken a long time to settle, nature has taken over the remnants of the human world left behind, creeper vines smash their way through the windows and wrap their green arms around the door frames. Wildlife makes its tentative return, deer and later wolves living in the ruins of San Diego and Santa Monica. In the first level, Hesh and Logan explore a destroyed theatre, the balcony crumpled and collapsed, forming a bridge to the seats above. Sunshine pours in through a hole in the roof, dust particles suspended in the beams, the most arresting use of lighting in the entire game. A flock of birds are disturbed and fly up into the waiting sky above as Hesh and Logan explore. You move up out of the theatre and into the opening air, revealing a great concrete wall complete with guard towers and barbed wire. The Hollywood sign peeks in, sitting on its hill in the background. It was a real stop-and-look moment for me, even in 2013. Replaying this section in 2019, it is an odd combination of prophecy and warning from history. It's so well done. In the second level, Hesh and Logan explore their old home, emerging to survey the landscape beyond. It is a ripped, torn, scarred place, almost apocalyptic, the ruptures and chasms scored in the flesh of the earth. The middle part of this level is a stealth sequence from the perspective of your faithful dog, Riley. You sneak through a massive enemy encampment, meeting Rourke, the antagonist for this game, briefly before carrying on your way. In Ghosts, home is under attack, but it is the characters' homes they are defending, not yours. When Logan, Hesh and Elias are running to escape Odin's missiles in the prologue, the neighbourhood they call home is affluent, wealthy, the perceived calm and serenity of the open, tree-lined roads, serving to make the impending violence all that more aggressive. It is not, I think, a slice of life in America that many people would relate to. This is deliberate. Ghosts, more than any of the Call of Duty games I have played, is consciously pitching itself as escapist and aspirational. In early games, the soldiers you played as and fought with just wanted to go home. In Ghosts, being soldiers is pretty much the only identifying features of any of the main characters. Hesh, Logan, Elias, they are not everymen in the mould of Soap or Gaz or Vasquez. They are not you or I, no. They are elite super soldiers, beneficiaries of rank nepotism, their only other qualifying features being their whiteness, their tough oorah-ness, and their willingness to ask absolutely no questions at all, about what is being asked of them. Ghosts wants it this way because it all supports the very specific story it is trying to tell. This is all just the frame, however. The Federation, its troops, tanks, helicopters and gunships give the game a reason to throw waves upon waves of targets at the player to shoot, but these digital soldiers aren't the true antagonists of Ghosts. That title belongs to Gabriel Rourke. Rourke is an ex-member of the eponymous Ghosts. His character is even seen in the highly stylized introduction cinematic to the game and the Ghosts themselves, a particularly, even by Call of Duty standards, elite team of Special Forces soldiers, about the most badass, tough-spittingly, hard-as-nails group of individuals that I think is biologically possible. Rourke is hunting Ghosts because years ago, Elias, the father of Logan and Hesh, found himself caught in an impossible situation in the centre of a flooding city in South America, one hand holding onto a twisted piece of metalwork, the other clutching that of his commanding officer, Rourke. He drops him A because the game tells the player to, and B because the choice, for want of a better word, is very explicitly framed as choosing between trying to save Rourke and risking the lives of the rest of his team, or dropping Rourke and surviving. Rourke is captured, tortured and turned by what becomes the Federation. The Federation-US conflict serves as a backdrop. The entire rest of the plot is driven by Rourke's efforts to take revenge on those who have done him wrong. Not the Federation for keeping him in a hole for months and feeding him poisoned food, you understand? No, it is Elias for dropping him because his hands were a bit slippery. Rourke's villainy is limp, shallow, underdeveloped. The drive of his arc, if you can call it that, is based on the consequences of a tough battlefield decision that Rourke, a seasoned combat veteran, would surely have experience of. One can't help but think that a brief conversation, an apology and a handshake would have surely resolved the situation. It isn't a thought that any of the characters entertain, however, preferring actions to words when it comes to problem solving, something common to the Call of Duty games as a whole. Ghosts ultimately is a revenge drama, a paper-thin and poorly executed revenge drama, sure, but it is the type of story that Ghosts tells that drives one of the game's most significant divergences from almost any Call of Duty title you care to name. Ghosts is arguably the first game in the franchise to drop the narratively divergent multi-nationality aspects of its single-player campaign and tries to tell one story surrounding one group of characters from beginning to middle to end. Sure, the jet-setting nature of the Call of Duty aesthetic still needed to be satisfied, and even Ghosts can't conceive of a reason why one of the main characters had to be in space while another was running along a cargo train in South America, so you will inhabit the shoes of some bit-part soldiers in order that the plot doesn't simply burst. As such, you will play as space soldiers, in 2 instances, a tank driver, drone operator, helicopter pilot. But these moments are brief, however, while providing the most diverting of mechanical variations from the meat and potatoes gameplay that Call of Duty has dined out on since 2007. Crucially, however, these brief sojourns in another soldier's shoes support the action that the main characters are involved in, whether mechanically or thematically. During the prologue, Hesh, Logan and Elias flee the orbital bombardment while the perspective shifts to the space soldier character as they fight to destroy the gun platform from which the missiles are being launched. An aerial assault on one of Rourke's hideouts where the player controls one of the attack helicopters pivots to Logan's perspective as he hops out of another helicopter to continue the assault on foot. At the end of the game, the player takes command of a Federation orbital weapon similar to the one from the beginning and levels the missiles at Hesh and Logan's location on their command. In previous games, the various characters worked towards a shared goal from different parts of the globe, but with their own specific priorities. In Modern Warfare, Jackson and the Marines fight toward Al-Assad's palace in the Middle East, while at the same time Price and Soap fight Zakhaev's forces in Eastern Europe. The action is separate, weaving 2 narratives before joining them as one in the final third of the game. In Ghosts, the focus is much more precise, with no piece of action being divorced from the context of the main characters and their specific goals. Everything is about Rourke and Hesh and Logan. The more personal focus of Ghosts, the narrowing of the narrative to just a handful of characters, reflects the shift from global conflict in previous Call of Duty titles to its more particular brand of revenge tale. On reflection, I think I was lying to myself more than it was Infinity Ward lying to me. After 10 games and almost $6 billion in sales revenue by the release of Ghosts, I was kidding myself if I thought I was going to get anything that in any way broke the mould of the games that had come before this one. The Call of Duty series had had a decade to polish and perfect its shooting and gameplay mechanics by the release of Ghosts, and it is this slickness, this refinement, this irresistible sense of fun and power that these games provide for players that is fundamentally at odds with the story that Ghosts was ostensibly trying to tell. The Call of Duty games are power fantasies. They are products that are marketed for maximum revenue potential, and both of these driving factors are fundamentally at odds with the story of a weak America that is reinforced by mechanics that underline this theme. Ghosts, to its credit, does try to truly engage with its founding principles though, for about 2 levels, and then Hesh and Logan team up with the Ghosts, who are, let us not forget, a legendary, super elite, highly trained force, to ramp a truck through the front gates of an enemy base in the ruins of a baseball stadium to save a captured comrade, destroying a convoy of enemy vehicles using plastic explosives fired from a grenade launcher. Even if we stick to a description of what Logan, Hesh and the rest of the Ghosts get up to in the main story, it reads more like the events of a trilogy of Tom Clancy novels than any grounded narrative of an America under siege. Assaulting an oil rig, sinking a destroyer, repelling an enemy attack from the deck of an aircraft carrier, rappelling down the side of a skyscraper, a breathless pursuit along a suspended cargo train. In Ghosts, the player commands the most breathtakingly vast and technologically sophisticated assortment of military hardware I've ever seen in a game. For a country beaten and bloody to the point of capitulation, America is still in a strong enough economic position to command aircraft carriers, squadrons of aircraft, field waves of tanks, call in drone strikes, dispatch submarines to far-flung reaches of the earth, and all of this without even mentioning training practical super soldiers and equipping them with seemingly whatever weaponry and peripherals they could possibly need. At times, the gameplay does lean towards grappling with mechanical variations that emphasise the premise of the entire title though. Again, these moments are about as few and about as throwaway as the thematic ones. In one level, after Rourke allows himself to be captured in order to pull off an escape ripped exactly from The Dark Knight Rises, the Ghosts have to stealth their way through a jungle to escape. In the next, our heroes sneak their way into an enemy base dressed as guards. Heading towards the end game, Riley is injured and you have to make your escape, picking Riley up and moving him to cover before dropping him to take out some enemies. It is a shallower and briefer section than the one that this rips from, the end of All Gillied Up, where you have to carry an injured Captain Macmillan to your extraction point. Nevertheless, these moments do help to punctuate the more standard shooting, grenading, jumping out of planing that makes up the rest of the levels. I actually think that the action in Ghosts is incredible and is very well conducted, paced and visualised. Interestingly enough, their narrative focus on your role within a crack special ops team informed my own personal enjoyment of the gunplay mechanics more than even any of the previous Call of Duty games. My favourite levels in the original Modern Warfare were the ones where I was playing with Soap, Price, Gaz and the gang. The SAS are a legendary regiment and I have read a lot about their history. Bravo 20, the Iranian embassy siege. Being able to imagine myself, if only digitally, as one of those elite soldiers allowed me to roleplay in an odd way, and gave every precise headshot and tactical use of a flashbang a thematic narrative heft that I just didn't feel in the American part of the campaign fighting the brutes of Paul Jackson. The intersection of narrative and mechanics in that game is carried over to Ghosts. The framing of the narrative using a specific group of special ops soldiers as the focus contributes to the power fantasy. Of course I am a special operative, observe how I am able to take down several soldiers in a second by slowing down time. Removing the parts of the campaign where you play as a regular grunt serves to further empower the player, and this ultimately is what Call of Duty has always been about. Another thing that Call of Duty has been about is sequel baiting, or at least sequel leaving the door open if sales are healthy enough. Though Modern Warfare itself is a pretty self-contained story, it spawned 2 sequels in Modern Warfare 2 and 3, and all the first 3 Black Ops games build on a family dynasty and follow a sprawling narrative covering different time periods. Ghosts is no different in wanting its own similarly convoluted story, perhaps a trilogy of its own, along with a similarly lucrative payday. As of August 2019, however, Ghosts remains alone in the Call of Duty chronology, but not for want of trying. After a breakneck speed in pursuit of Rourke, our heroes finally catch up with him. He is cornered on a train suspended high above the Atacama Desert. Even outnumbered 2-1 though, Rourke still finds himself with his gun to Logan's head. Hesh throws down his gun and Rourke shoots him in the gut. Game over. But not quite. Hesh says the code word checkmate, calling in a missile from the captured Federation gun platform in space. If he's going down, Rourke is coming with him. The missile destroys the tracks, toppling the train car into the ocean. Hesh and Rourke wrestle beneath tons of water. Hesh finally pins Rourke, holding him in front of his chest. Logan fires, the bullet piercing Rourke's chest, passing through him and hitting Hesh too. The ocean floods in. You grab Hesh and swim towards a white light and surely the surface. The light is a metaphor, a visual and emotional ending. But Ghosts can't resist one last set of fireworks. You wash up on a beach just in time to witness the Federation's fleet destroyed by more missiles from the gun platform. A moment of quiet and calm, the waves lapping lazily at your feet, the rockets raining down like falling stars before Rourke smashes his way back onto the scene, dragging you off to experience the same torture and privation that he did. A post-credits scene shows a cage in the jungle, thunder and lightning crashing over the shivering leaves. Call of Duty Ghosts shall return. Writing this at the beginning of September 2019, we are still waiting. Infinite Warfare, again developed by Infinity Ward, was released 3 years after Ghosts, set in a different universe with a completely different cast of characters and introducing completely new settings and mechanics. It's an odd fact because, going purely by number of units shipped, Ghosts comes fourth in the entire franchise, moving just shy of 29 million units by February 2019. It was, ostensibly at least, the most radical seeming Call of Duty game considering its premise and the image of America that it was claiming that it was going to be investigating. That image in the end was sidelined for a swashbuckling romp through Central and South America, centering the personal story of Hesh, Logan and Rourke over everything else, even the actual gameplay mechanics. Perhaps Ghosts didn't go far enough. It is certainly conservative even by Call of Duty's low standards, not straying too far in terms of mechanical revolution nor opening cinematics aside in terms of theme. Ghosts had incredible potential. It was an opportunity for a truly novel Call of Duty experience, and one that, in terms of the evolution of the franchise, 10 years after the first Call of Duty and 6 years after the peerless Modern Warfare, couldn't have come soon enough. It turns out, however, that it takes more than a dog, even an all-American, apple pie, stars and stripes German Alsatian, to trick the by that time jaded Call of Duty fanbase into believing that what they were consuming was anything other than the same Call of Duty with nothing more than aesthetic changes to the mechanics and narrative. Thanks for watching.